All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to embark on a really fascinating philosophical exploration of our daily routines. We're stepping back, looking at the big picture, and asking some pretty fundamental questions about why we do the things we do every single day. We're diving into a brilliant analysis based on the teachings of philosopher Mario Sergio Cortella, and we're mixing that with one of the absolute greatest cinematic masterpieces of the 20th century. So grab a comfortable seat and get ready to reflect, because we are looking closely at that delicate balance between the machine and the human. So I really want you to ask yourself this right now, like, honestly. Do you control your life, or are you just a cog in the machine? Are you truly making conscious choices about your career, your relationships, your daily habits? Or are you kind of just living on autopilot, waking up, doing the work, going to sleep, only to repeat the whole shebang again tomorrow? It's a heavy question, right? But it's literally the exact question we need to answer to figure out if we're actually the ones steering our own ships. Section 1. The danger of alienation. To actually answer that question, we first need to understand a foundational premise from Mario Sergio Cortella about the modern grind, and that is how we define alienation. Now, alienation isn't just about feeling lonely or disconnected. In this context, alienation happens when you lack clarity of purpose. You just start doing things completely automatically. And because you don't have a clear why for your actions, well, someone else gladly steps in and dictates your direction for you. Cortella puts it super bluntly. When this happens, you no longer belong to yourself. You become completely detached from the very reasons behind your actions. It's absolutely the ultimate danger of acting without a clear purpose. Section 2. The Chaplin Metaphor. To really visualize this alienation, Cortella brings in a masterclass of a metaphor using none other than Charlie Chaplin. Now, we often think of Chaplin purely as a comedian, right? The funny guy with the cane and the mustache. But actually, he was a brilliant provocateur who used physical comedy to deliver incredibly sharp critiques of modern life. Let's look at a brief timeline to set the stage here. Born in London back in 1889, Chaplin created the Tramp, or Carlitos as he's affectionately known in places like Brazil, and this character represented the sheer resilience of the human spirit. His cultural impact was so profound that even way after his death on Christmas Day in 1977, he just kept inspiring generations. You can even hear echoes of his influence in famous music, like the Brazilian song The Drunkard and the Tightrope Walker by João Bosco and Aldir Blanc, which directly references his iconic imagery. But his absolute masterpiece of social critique, that came in 1936. And what's really fascinating here is the unique position of that 1936 film, Modern Times. It was essentially his last silent film, yet ironically enough, it was the very first time audiences actually heard his voice when he sings a song near the end. He even composed the film's original soundtrack, including the melody that would later become the classic song Smile. But the absolute most fascinating part? The film asks such a profound question. Basically, why do we do what we do? And criticize the mechanization of humanity so effectively that it impartially angered everyone at the political extremes. It irritated the Nazis and it irritated the Soviet Stalinists. He generated enemies on all sides simply by questioning the loss of humanity in the industrial age. Section 3. Trapped in the Gears. Let's dive right into the specific, iconic scenes of Modern Times that visually represent this modern anxiety. This is where we see the worker quite literally trapped in the gears. Just imagine the scene. The factory bosses want to eliminate lunch breaks so the workers never, ever stop producing. So what do? They invent an automatic feeding machine. The worker is strapped in, the machine lifts a bowl, the soup is served, a mechanical arm grabs a napkin, the napkin wipes his mouth, soup, wipe, faster and faster. Try to picture the sheer robotic, disjointed chaos of this moment. Eventually, the machine just completely short-circuits, throwing food absolutely everywhere. It's hilarious, yes, for sure, but it brilliantly highlights the utter absurdity of treating a human being exactly like a machine part just to save a few measly minutes of time. And then comes the assembly line scene. Our protagonist is standing at a conveyor belt tightening 2 bolts on blades passing by. But the belt relentlessly speeds up. He has to work faster, faster, faster. The repetitive motion entirely takes over his nervous system. He literally has a psychological breakdown. He steps away from the line, but his arms, they're still violently jerking in that tightening motion. He starts running around the factory, mindlessly trying to tighten anything that looks like a nut, including the buttons on his supervisor's clothes. He has completely lost his human agency. Which brings us right to the climax of the film's metaphor. In a moment of total chaos, Chaplin's character falls onto the conveyor belt and is pulled directly into the massive grinding gears of the factory machine. He weaves through these giant metal teeth, and miraculously, he comes out the other side completely unharmed. But why? Well, metaphorically, it's because he's lost his humanity. He's no longer a person with desires or will or purpose. He wasn't crushed by the machine because he has seamlessly integrated into it. He is the machine. Section 4. Job versus life's work. This cinematic genius perfectly connects back to Mario Sergio Cortella's philosophy about the modern workplace. It brings us to a really critical distinction we all need to make in our own lives. Cortella draws a sharp line between a job and your life's work. So a job is something you do primarily for income, for prestige, or recognition, right? It is a means of living. And hey, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We all need to make a living. But your life's work, what Cortella refers to in Portuguese as your obra, that's different. Your life's work is what truly moves you. It's the thing you do with intrinsic joy, deep dedication, and profound satisfaction. A job only becomes alienating when it's just a job, and you start acting like the worker on Chaplin's assembly line. And this brilliantly illustrates our main takeaway, captured in this really powerful quote. The worst thing is when you don't have clarity of your purpose and someone else has it for you. Think about that. If you don't know why you're tightening the bolts, the factory owner will gladly give you a reason, and you can bet it's going to be to serve their machine, not your life. You totally lose ownership over your own actions. Section 5. The humanization of life. So how do we actually fix this? Well, we have to broaden the scope of this lesson to the humanization of our entire existence. 14. Do you know what that number represents? When Charlie Chaplin was an elderly man, he was awarded an honorary Oscar. And when he walked out on that stage, the audience stood up and they applauded. And they just kept applauding for 14 uninterrupted minutes. It literally remains the longest standing ovation in the entire history of the Academy Awards. Why? Because his lifelong plea for the humanization of the modern world resonated deeply and universally with every single person in that room, and honestly, with audiences across the globe. Cortella's conclusion here is incredibly practical. He says the answer isn't to just run away. We shouldn't suddenly abandon our jobs, drop out of school, or walk away from our marriages and friendships. Instead, we must engage in these areas with what he calls conscious adhesion. Basically, this means being fully present. It means actively choosing to be there, knowing exactly why you're there, and participating with your full humanity, rather than just, going through the motions like a programmed robot on an assembly line. Which brings us to our final lingering thought for today. Take a good look at your own daily routines, your work, your relationships, even the technology right there in your hands. Do you use the machine to build your life's work, or have you become a part of it? I really want you to take that question with you today. Reflect on your purpose, reclaim your conscious adhesion, and make sure you are the one driving your life forward. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.